You're listening to Inside Insight, the podcast that dives into the latest innovations and strategies in manufacturing, distribution, and Dynamics 365 Business Central. Brought to you by InsightWorks, this show features our hosts, Ryan and Emma, as they bring you expert conversations, industry insights, and practical advice to help you stay ahead in this constantly evolving world.
All right, so today we're going to kind of dive into something that I think a lot of manufacturers out there probably wrestle with on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's how to balance your labor costs with your production demands.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if you have too many people on staff, then your costs are going to be through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you have too few, then you're constantly running the risk of, missing deadlines.
Right. You can't get the orders out.
You can't get the orders out, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to be taking a look at Shop Floor Insight, which is a manufacturing execution system for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central.
Okay.
And we're going to see how it aims to kind of help manufacturers walk that tightrope, specifically by using smarter shift scheduling.
Yeah.
So let's dig into, how it actually tackles these overstaffing and understaffing problems that everyone faces.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point to start by saying that, a lot of people, when they think about inefficient scheduling, they think, okay, well, we're paying people for time. They don't need to be there. But it goes beyond that.
Right.
It's not just the wages.
It's the overtime.
Right. The unnecessary overtime, which just cuts into your margins.
Yeah.
And then the production delays because you don't have the right people there when you need them.
Yep.
And then think about all the administrative work that goes into doing scheduling and approvals manually.
Oh, yeah. And anyone who's ever had to deal with that knows it's a nightmare.
Absolutely.
It's a ton of paperwork. It's a ton of back and forth.
Yeah.
And honestly, it can really impact employee morale, too.
Yeah.
If they don't have consistent schedules.
No, yeah. You bet.
It could even lead to people leaving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it seems like having a more data-driven approach is pretty crucial here.
Definitely.
So let's talk about Shop Floor Insight and how it approaches this whole shift scheduling piece. So starting with these automated recurring shift patterns.
Okay.
Can you kind of break down what the practical benefit is for someone who's actually working on the factory floor?
Sure. So basically, instead of someone having to manually go in and create these schedules every single week, the system lets you actually set standard shift rotations. So say you've got a plant that runs 3 shifts. You've got a day shift, an evening shift, and a night shift. You can set that rotation up once, and the system will automatically cycle your employees through those shifts based on, whatever rules you've established.
Oh, so it takes care of all that repetitive work.
Exactly. It really frees up a lot of time for other things.
That makes a lot of sense. But manufacturing is, it can be pretty unpredictable.
For sure.
So what happens when things don't go according to plan, when those last-minute changes pop up?
Yeah, that's where this visual shift calendar is really useful.
Okay.
It gives you a really clear, real-time picture of, who's scheduled for what shift, both current and upcoming shifts. So let's say you suddenly get a big rush order and you need to get some extra people on the night shift.
Right.
A supervisor can look at the calendar and see immediately who's available to come in. They can make the adjustments right there in the system. And it can even send notifications to the employees who are affected by the change.
So it gives you that flexibility to react quickly.
Exactly. It's all about being able to adapt on the fly.
Now let's talk about time tracking and payroll.
Okay.
Because that's a huge area where things can get messy and expensive if you're not careful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How does Shop Floor Insight help streamline that whole process?
So it simplifies things in a few different ways.
Mm-hmm.
For starters, employees can use something like a barcode system to clock in and out, which is much more accurate than relying on, paper timesheets or manual logs.
Sure.
Then the system can also handle things like approving time off requests automatically. And most importantly, it integrates directly with payroll. So you're not entering data in multiple places. You eliminate a lot of errors and you get much better tracking of overtime, which is obviously essential for controlling those labor costs.
Makes sense. Fewer errors, better control over overtime.
Exactly.
I feel like any manufacturer would be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I think so.
But how does this system help them make better decisions about staffing levels over the long term?
Well, it all comes down to the data that the system collects.
Okay.
So it's constantly tracking who's working where and for how long. And with that information, you can start to see trends and identify places where you might be inefficient.
So give me an example.
Sure. Let's say you notice that productivity tends to be lower on a particular shift every week. The data can help you figure out why that might be happening.
You mentioned something about a Monday morning dip earlier.
Oh, right. So one manufacturer was seeing this consistent drop in productivity on Monday mornings.
Interesting.
And when they dug into the data, they realized it was because they were scheduling a lot of overtime on Sunday.
So people were just burnt out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They were coming in tired on Monday, and it was affecting their output.
that makes sense.
So they adjusted the schedule to reduce Sunday overtime and saw a noticeable improvement in their overall efficiency.
So it's all about using the insights to refine your staffing level.
Exactly. Make adjustments based on actual performance.
So if a manufacturer decides to go with shop floor insight for their scheduling, what are some of the bottom line benefits they can expect to see?
Well, first and foremost, you're going to see lower labor costs because you're minimizing that unnecessary overtime.
Right.
You're also going to see increased efficiency because the workload is being distributed more effectively.
Yep.
And there's a good chance you'll have happier employees because their schedules are more predictable.
Sure.
Plus, your payroll processing will be more streamlined because the time tracking is accurate.
So it's really taking you from, just reacting to production needs to actually being able to anticipate and manage them.
Exactly. It's all about having more control and predictability.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. I think it really highlights how important it is to have a structured, data-driven approach to shift scheduling in manufacturing.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about all the hidden costs and inefficiencies that you might have if you're relying on those older methods.
Mm-hmm.
So, exploring a solution like this could really help manufacturers gain more control and create a more efficient path forward.
I agree.
All right, well, thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Of course, my pleasure.
I think this will give our listeners a lot to consider.
I hope so.